Creed formed in Tallahassee, Florida in 1994. They would go on to become one of the biggest rock bands of the last 30 years. Then, at the height of their success, they shocked the music world. Creed announced they were breaking up as a band. It's been many years since that decision was made, and a lot has changed since then. As you may know, most of the members of Creed went on to form Alter Bridge. And now, after many years, Creed have just announced their reunion. A lot of fans wondered if this day would even come. Creed had a troubled history, and vocalist Scott Stapp took the blame for that original breakup. He said on the Net Positive podcast earlier this year, "I think there was some frustration and anger, because the guys were like, this isn't what we signed up for." And to their credit, it's because they didn't want to be fake. They didn't want to be hypocrites. They were like, hey man, we're not living the life that someone who claims to be a Christian is living. And we don't want to have people perceive us that way and live a lie. So that's just them being authentic. So I can't blame them for that. And me too. I was telling them, guys, sorry. At the time, I wanted to participate in the same lifestyle, and was. So we were kind of all in a conundrum. We were living like rock stars, man. We were young and living the life. And we were on fire, man. I can own my part. I got mixed up in some things I shouldn't have that I go to a program for today. And that, I'm sure, was a major part. Because had I not developed those issues, I think we probably could have worked through everything else. So I'll take the blame about that. It was 1994 in Tallahassee, Florida. Classmates Scott Stapp and Mark Tremonti at Florida State University decided to start a band together. They built the band from the ground up, playing local shows, eventually recording their debut album on a budget of just $6,000. That record was My Own Prison. It was released through their own label, Blue Collar Records, and sold about 6,000 copies around the state of Florida. It was in 1997 when someone from Wind Up Records got their hands on My Own Prison. She immediately knew this record was special, and she wanted to sign them to a deal. She said when she first listened to Creed, she immediately heard an arena band, and her instincts were correct. They took that record, My Own Prison, and it was remixed. They made certain adjustments which would give it a more radio-friendly sound. And then they released this historic rock record in 1997, and it would change their lives forever. They released 4 singles from this album, each one getting bigger than the rest. Creed became overnight rock stars, living life in the fast lane. But unfortunately, that rock and roll lifestyle would eventually catch up to them. It was unheard of to sell 6 million copies on a debut album. Creed was unstoppable. With the cash rolling in from the breakout success of their debut album, Creed would enter the studio for their sophomore record. And this wouldn't be a sophomore slump. This elevated them to global superstardom with Human Clay. The first single from that record, Higher, would break records, spending 17 weeks on top of the rock radio charts. To put this into perspective, this album in just 2 years' time sold more than 10 million copies and was certified diamond. This is one of the biggest rock records of all time. It's hard to put it into words just how big Creed were for the few years that they were active in the late 90s and early 2000s. And that's what made it so shocking when Creed abruptly announced their breakup at the peak of their success. In 2002, Scott Stapp was driving to the One Last Breath music video shoot. Stapp was in a vehicle on the interstate near Orlando, Florida, when a vehicle struck him from behind going around 50 or 60 miles per hour. Stapp said he flew forward and his body hit the steering wheel. His head hit the windshield. Stapp told MTV, "The woman behind me, I guess, wasn't paying attention and nailed me from behind going probably 50 or 60 miles per hour. I flew forward and my body hit the steering wheel and my head hit the windshield and I kind of came back and hit my seat." Stapp called his manager to let him know what had happened as he was on his way to shoot that music video. He then realized he had been injured. He said, "I was kind of trembling. Even my lips were trembling and I was disoriented. I had a concussion from the whiplash and from hitting the windshield." He said he refused to call an ambulance or go to the hospital. He told them, "I did that against my manager's wishes and against the doctor's wishes. I have a personal doctor and I had him come see me at the house because it immediately becomes big news if I'm in the hospital. I was trying to avoid the press." Despite those injuries, Stapp said he would go to the One Last Breath music video shoot the following day, against his better judgment. He said, "I had medication to help me with the pain because my back and spine and neck and my head was killing me, and I had a very bad headache. So I shot the video. A doctor and a masseuse were on site. They actually had to use a body double a couple times for some things I just couldn't do." After that music video shoot, Stapp had some imaging done to see his injuries. Doctors discovered a bulging disc between two vertebrae in his neck and a smashed disc in his lower back. Despite their meteoric rise to success, selling more than 10 million albums in just 2 years' time, guitarist Mark Tremonti said that things were never the same in Creed after that accident. They got together after a year-long hiatus. "We got our instruments and played, but neither of us was taking it seriously. We were just running in circles. There wasn't a vibe like on the previous records. It felt very job-like. When every day just seemed to get weirder and weirder, it's natural to start discussing that with the people around you. There wasn't ever a point where everyone was like, all right, I'm done with it. It was more of a question of what exactly is happening. What is going to happen tomorrow night? What's going to happen 3 months from now?" Later that year, in December 2002, Creed's most infamous show ever took place in Chicago. This was surely one of the catalysts that led to the band's breakup at the time. Vocalist Scott Stapp appeared on stage, and his behavior was bizarre to say the least. To make matters worse, guitarist Mark Tremonti had his entire family in attendance at the disastrous show. Some fans in the crowd even later sued the band over the performance. MTV described the whole ordeal, writing, "The pinnacle of Creed's problems took place in Chicago in December 2002. Whether Stapp was inebriated or simply sick as he had claimed, his performance was so terrible that some members of the crowd sued the band for sucking. He reportedly said that he had some things going on in his life, kind of felt alone, and didn't think anybody had his back at the time." Tremonti later told MTV, "My entire family was at that show, so I was very irritated, but I forgave Scott for it. I talked to him about it, but he didn't offer any kind of explanation. That's probably what bothered me the most. There was no closure on it. It was like, let's keep moving on. And I was like, well, we've got to address these issues. But we just never did." Communication within Creed was non-existent at this point. Guitarist Mark Tremonti described the change in their relationship. He said, "People in bands, at first they're high school or college buddies who just want to get out there and rock. But after it gets to a bigger level, it turns into a business where people have to make decisions about their careers, and people see things differently. You start to see your friends as somebody who might hold you back from something that you really want to do. Their opinions might not be your opinions, and a friendly disagreement might turn into a career-ending decision. When Creed came out on the radio 7 years ago, there was a lot of poppy radio music. I think My Own Prison was the first song in a long time, with the serious tone and a message behind it. After that, a lot of radio programmers started programming more serious-sounding rock and roll, and I think that's what I'm most proud of. Creed perhaps opened the doors for some other bands who may have had a message." In June 2004, Creed would shock the music world. At the peak of their success, they announced they were breaking up as a band. A statement from Tremonti read at the time, "Creed was one of the most amazing journeys through music and friendship I am blessed to say I was a part of. I made memories I can never replace. I just want to thank the fans who supported us and became part of the Creed experience. We could not have accomplished anything without you." Vocalist Scott Stapp would eventually go on to face serious addiction-related issues. But the good news is, Stapp seems to be in a much better place these days, which has undoubtedly paved the way for Creed to make their triumphant comeback. All those years ago, Scott was much younger when he was dealing with that huge rise to fame for Creed, and most people aren't equipped to deal with that kind of overnight success. And when you couple that with substance abuse issues, it can be a recipe for disaster. And now Creed has a bit of a new beginning. People seem to be genuinely excited to see them coming back, and that's a beautiful thing. After all these years, the Creed fans have never given up on this band. I'm sure they've all learned a lot over the years, and I'm excited to see what happens next in the world of Creed. What's your favorite Creed memory? Let me know in the comments. And drop a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed this video. I would really appreciate that.